The leader of a North Carolina teachers union is outed as a Marxist and devout follower of mass-murdering dictators such as Mao Zedong and Vladimir Lenin. This is the guy who turned Virginia from a red state to a blue state. Now he's in charge of kids' education in North Carolina. I'm Dr. Duke, she's Katie, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness, and in this case, insane, murderous craziness, impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Before we start, I want to ask everybody to please consider downloading our new Freedom Project media app. With everything happening in cancel culture and silencing the voices on social media of conservatives, downloading our new app is the very best way to support our media and stay connected. It is absolutely free. And once you download the app, anywhere you can get apps, just turn on your notifications so we can tell you that content is coming to you. All right, Katie joins us now with a look at the health of our republic.
Attention parents. Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the teachers unions control you and your kids. And that should scare the bejeebers out of you. Let me explain. You care about your kids' education. Joe Biden doesn't. Kamala Harris doesn't. And we know the teachers unions certainly don't. That's why your kids are still stuck at home, not getting any sort of real education. Let me know in the comments. On a scale of 1 to Derek Zoolander Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good and who want to learn to do other stuff good too, how far behind do you think your students are this year because of the education lockdowns? Also, please share this video. It's for the children. Let's be honest, if you presented Joe Biden with a Ben Stiller dedicated building replica as a template for the way schools ought to operate, he'd be on board, even if they can't fit inside the building. That's actually their hope. But hey, while your kids are not being educated, the president is doing all he can, which includes walking with the world's greatest doctor of education, wife Jill, who also cares so much about the kids that walking the front lawn really solves the world's problems.
I just wanted some, joy, and I think things have been, so with the pandemic, just everybody's feeling a little down, so it's just a little joy, a little hope, that's all.
A little joy, a little hope, still no education. For his part, Joe is talking his usual nonsense, trying to not sound like the true elitist he is.
She said, I understand that you and your wife have a great love affair. And I said, I hope so. And I said, but everybody knows I love her more than she loves me. And she said, look me straight in the eye, I said, that's what everybody says.
That's the President of the United States. Can you see why we are so screwed? But CNN continues to prove their love to Joe with the latest in-depth analysis involving Joe Biden going to bed early and lighting a fire in the fireplace. Hard-hitting journalism at its finest. Where's the Pulitzer, I say? This is an actual story praising Biden for his structure and routine and how he actually sometimes puts a log onto the fire himself. Wow, so brave. Clearly, this story shows he's working tirelessly because he's not tired. So much sleep. We already knew this, but it's a full-on masturbation environment between the Biden administration and the media, like what is being encouraged at the University of North Texas. I wish I was making a joke. But this is the focus on college campuses, wearing a mask while masturbating, and the focus for our leaders and the media is to masturbate one another. This is just one of a million reasons why your children will not receive an actual education. On the note of 1 million, let's pivot to the lies that continue coming out of the Biden administration regarding vaccines, which we are told is the reason for keeping the schools closed. And the blatant lies come courtesy of Kamala Ding Dong, who continues to wait in the shadows for Joe to choke on his own stupidity. She's always there, and it's so creepy, but still not as creepy as Joe being Joe. Anyway, Kamala Ding Dong is out there peddling the lie that the Biden administration had to start the coronavirus vaccine implementation program with zero help from the Trump administration. That there was absolutely no plan in place, and everyone was just twiddling their thumbs.
I mean, the challenge, Mike, is that, what I explained to the mayors. There was no stockpile, right? It's, in many ways...
No stockpile of...
Of vaccines. right? So we're looking at this, there was no national strategy or plan for vaccinations. We were leaving it to the states and local leaders to try and figure it out. And so in many ways, we're starting from scratch on something that's been raging for almost an entire year.
Excuse me, but why is she only wearing one mask? Where's the second, third, and fourth masks? Does she want to kill everyone? I mean, in addition to Joe Biden, you know? But to her claims, there was no plan on the federal level, only to those dang states and localities. You see, she's just bitter because she wants complete control. And there were only about 1 million vaccines being distributed per day by the time Donald Trump left office. Looks to me like something was being done. But liars have to lie and say no stockpile, no plan. Even the brilliant, never flip-flopping flopster of a saintly, God-appointed Dr. Anthony Fauci, even this demigod had to be like, hold up, Kama.
Is the Biden administration starting from scratch with the vaccine distribution effort, or are you picking up where the Trump administration left off?
No, I mean, we certainly are not starting from scratch because there is activity going on in the distribution. We're coming in with fresh ideas, but also some ideas that were not bad ideas with the previous administration. You can't say it was absolutely not usable at all. So we are continuing, but you're going to see a real ramping up of it.
You see, the former Madam of Willie Brown got her definition of scratch mixed up.
She put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana.
Have you ever smoked?
I have.
Okay. Like in
and
college,
I inhaled. I did inhale.
Okay.
But then Fauci had to flip it again and defend his future master.
What I think the vice president is referring to is that the actual plan of getting the vaccine doses into people's arms was really rather vague. I mean, it was not a well-coordinated plan. Getting the vaccines made, getting them shipped through Operation Warp Speed was okay. But I believe what the vice president is referring to is what is the process of actually getting these doses into people?
First, don't you mansplain to her. And second, no, she meant start from scratch. And the one who is supposed to be in control, but we know isn't, reiterated how they supposedly started from scratch.
When you and I talked last, we talked about it's one thing to have the vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office. The vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office. The vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office. The vaccine, which we didn't have when we came into office. But a vaccinator. How do you get the vaccine into someone's arm?
Is that like the Terminator? Who for Joe will be Kamala. Yes, all the conspiracy theories today. It's got to make you want to share this video, if nothing else, which you can and should do right now. I'll wait. Okay, moving on to other women who probably choke up like the VP. I mean, if you decide to be a dance teacher in Chicago who puts out a video about standing in solidarity to not return to the classroom until it's safe and about not choosing between life or death by being said dance teacher, you must be high on something. And they called the video "The Moment We're Safe." And then the Chicago Teachers Union tweeted out the video because solidarity. If you get queasy from stupidity, consider this a warning to avert your eyes now.
Make it make sense. Safety is essential. Keep our students and our teachers safe.
Your tax dollars at work, team. And that's all that is at work, because here's the thing. Teachers unions don't work for you or your kids. They don't care about you or your kids. They care about getting the dollar signs for their teachers for the least amount of work. Exhibit A. We hear about the Red for Ed movement led by the teacher unions. It means the teachers protest instead of actually teaching. At this protest, a sign said, "The future is in our classrooms." Which is true, but you are not there to teach them. And now we know no one is in the classroom because politics is keeping the students out, at home, alone, without any sort of education because, again, teacher unions just want their teachers to get paid for not doing anything. And for some of them being science teachers, you know what? They're not really following the science. We know the children are not transmitting the virus and that the teachers aren't any more special and at risk of death from the virus than any other adult in the workforce, especially not the people who've been on the front lines this entire time and not complaining or calling in. Thank you, nurses and doctors. It's a tough pill to swallow for the teachers since, as I know from experience of being in the educational program and the classroom, educators are constantly told how special they are. Warm fuzzies from the snap cup. The CDC director, Dr. Rochelle Walensky, just said the schools should be open.
But I also want to be clear that there is increasing data to suggest that schools can safely reopen, and that safe reopening does not suggest that teachers need to be vaccinated in order to reopen safely.
But we'll circle back to the federal government's role here in true Press Secretary Jen Psaki style, who then refuted what the doctor said as being her saying it in her personal capacity, despite the obvious that she had the CDC banner behind her.
The president, let me be crystal clear, wants schools to open. He wants them to stay open, and he wants to do that safely. And he wants health and medical experts to be the guides for how we should do exactly that. So we're just not. Dr. Walensky spoke to this in her personal capacity. Obviously, she's the head of the CDC, but we're going to wait for the final guidance to come out so we can use that as a guide for schools around the country.
Where I come from, we call that talking out of both sides of your mouth. That's today's lesson for the children and adults alike. It's all a giant lie at this point. Yes, COVID is real and there is a danger within it, but there is also living, which comes with a risk every moment of every day. And we have chosen to put the politics and selfish desires by our federal leaders and teachers unions ahead of our children for months and months. When is enough for you? Until next time, stay healthy, America.
Joined now today by our international correspondent, Alex Newman. Alex, thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Duke. Great to be with you.
We have a great big problem. We have so many problems with education. In fact, this is the typical progressive way that they undermine our republic in every different way when it comes to education. There are so many crises in education. You've got out of control teachers unions. You have got the politics, the Black Lives Matter, the Planned Parenthood involvement. You've got the transformation of American education away from academic to becoming purely ideological. You've got 1,000 things wrong. But the one thing that we don't maybe talk enough about is just how dangerous the teachers unions. And I'm saying this because unlike a lot of other aspects of our failed public schools, the teachers unions are impacting much more than just school kids. They are changing the very complexion of what America is one generation at a time. And we've got a story here about a North Carolina teachers union boss by the name of Brian Prophet, who's literally a communist and has incredible sway over politics in the states that he's been involved. Talk about the story, please.
Yeah, this is another one of those, like, I told you so, right? Why are they teaching communism to the kids in the school? Well, partly because the teachers' unions are run by actual communists. And so this guy, Brian Prophet, there he is up on the screen. Unbelievable. He is a well-known revolutionary. He's actually involved with a group called Liberation Road. And if you go over to Liberation Road's website, you'll see that they are followers of Chairman Mao, who has the distinction of being the most prolific mass murderer in all of human history. Nobody, as far as we know, has murdered as many innocent human beings as Chairman Mao. And for these guys, we need to learn from Chairman Mao. We need to implement his ideas. They also give a tip of the hat to Vladimir Lenin, to Karl Marx, and to the communist revolutionaries who've gone before them. It's incredible. And now this guy is the vice president of the North Carolina Educators Association. Spent years in the classroom. Now he radicalizes teachers. And he's actually written struggle papers for this crazy Maoist communist organization where he advocates targeting the schools to build these revolutionary coalitions to overthrow our system of government and bring us all under slavery. It's mind-blowing, and yet there it is.
When I listen to him talk, he like so many of these union bosses, bosses. I don't understand why our country is so blind when it comes to education. When was the last time you heard any union boss talk about making our kids better readers, making our kids better prepared for careers, making our kids math literate? No. The teachers barely talk about the kids. The union bosses never do. This guy has come out and said flat out that his main function is capitalism's got to go. He's a teachers union boss, and his primary mission is to get rid of capitalism and turn America into a socialist country. And this seems to be completely like what you would expect. There's not no eyelids eyebrows are raised by this. Nobody sees this as a conflict of interest. This guy Brian Prophet is almost single-handedly responsible for turning Virginia into a blue state. How'd that happen? Talk about his involvement in the kind of politics that basically turned Virginia from a red state to a blue state.
Yeah, there's actually a really interesting article about Liberation Road, this organization that he's working with, and what they did in Virginia. So basically, on their public documents and statements, they identify the Republican Party as the primary enemy of the revolution. And so they seek all different ways to destroy the Republican Party so they can destroy the other things they want to destroy: capitalism, heterosexuality, traditional gender ideas like male and female. And so Trevor Loudon, who I know you know him well as well. He writes for the New American, and he also writes for the Epoch Times. He did a really interesting piece in the Epoch Times going through how Liberation Road was involved in flipping Virginia from a red conservative state, turning it into a blue state. And that involves partly mass migration. That involves registering everybody who would never vote to go vote. It involves using all sorts of political trickery to get them to go and vote for Democrats and communists. They've also, this Liberation Road group, infiltrated the highest echelons of the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party establishment, to the point now where the Democratic Party and their platform is actually now moving very, very close to full-blown Marxism.
Well, when you look at Kamala Harris and AOC and Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, you look at the only Democrat congressmen that anybody can name in this country, the ones who are constantly on TV for their controversial behavior, they're all really, for lack of a better word, Maoists. And he's a union boss in North Carolina. And we see how North Carolina is teetering. In this next election cycle, if not in 2 years, certainly in 4, North Carolina will be the new Virginia. It will be unrecognizably blue. Just what this group did in Virginia, they're doing it in North Carolina. There are a lot of other states where they've got their fingerprints here. And, this idea that pretty much now American education is being run and controlled by people who are outright anti-American leftists. They are socialists. Black Lives Matter with its huge footprint in the schools. We know that the leaders were trained by Weather Underground socialists. It's unbelievable times that we live in, but I'm afraid that the revolution has gotten so far and is so deeply embedded now that there's not much you can do about it. Alex, at the end of the last segment, I broached with you a big 800-pound gorilla in the refrigerator, so to speak. Is it too late? I mean, have they infiltrated American society so deeply and profoundly? I mean, one of the two major political parties, the party, by the way, that's not the least bit concerned about voter fraud at the level we saw it in the last election cycle, teaming up with sort of soulless, politically leftist tech companies to silence conservative voters. Have we reached the point now where this is not much we can do about the infiltration of people like Brian Prophet?
Well, it's a good question, Duke, and I think a lot depends on parents. No parent with a brain would allow this lunatic to come into their house and talk to their children, right? Even supervised, right? Would you let this guy come into your house and talk to your kids? Absolutely not. And yet, so many of these same parents who wouldn't dream of letting this maniac into their home will send their kids for 8 hours a day, for 5 days a week, for 12 years to go study under people who are under his influence, under people who believe literally the exact same garbage. And so as long as parents continue to do that, as long as American parents, something like 74% of American parents continue to send their children to these brainwash camps, as long as that continues, the revolution will not be stopped. In fact, it's almost guaranteed to be successful. Even if a handful of kids slip through their grasp, slip out of their claws, they'll get the vast majority of them. America will be finished. However, I think the mainstream of America today is still diametrically opposed to, is very hostile to these ideas. The problem is, do they have the strength and the will to do something about it? And that really begins with protecting your kids. If American parents keep sending their kids to these brainwash camps, I think the revolution will succeed. America will live through the very same types of things that we saw in Cuba, in Germany, in Vietnam, in China, in the Soviet Union, and everybody thinks that's extreme. That's where we're headed, folks. This guy is a Maoist, and he is one among many. It's the tip of the iceberg. But if American parents see what's going on and start taking action and protecting their kids, and we're seeing this in huge numbers, Duke, with all the schools shut down, massive numbers of parents are getting their kids out. If we see more of that, I think there's a chance we can put a stop to this.
We'll take one last look at Brian Prophet. Put the picture up there. This is a guy with his intensity and what he's written in the past. If he found himself in a position of power in a burgeoning communist America, this is a guy who would literally put a bullet in your head. He would put a bullet in your skull. He is such a true believer. Very dangerous. And the fact that we put this monster in charge of school children and his own lecturing, his own screeds, his own so-called struggle papers, make it clear that your kids are just human capital. Your kids are just grist for the mill of socialist revolution. They're handicapped. These kids are brainwashed. They're held kidnapped in these 8-hour-a-day public schools, listening to the same kind of leftist Marxist garbage again and again. They're going to be the ones who are going to lead this revolution, and he's going to be at the head of it. Teachers' unions. We started the premise of these two segments off with this. There is perhaps no more less talked about a real problem in American education than these teachers' unions. Give us a final word or two about how not only are they worthless and money-grubbing, not only are they venal and selfish, not interested in your kids, but they, perhaps more than anyone, steer the course of education in ways that are very dangerous.
Yeah, and that's been going on for 100 years now. The National Education Association has been promoting globalism and communism and a U.S. Department of Education, and now the homosexuality, and all of it really is coming through the teachers union, and then the teachers union makes sure it becomes policy. Incredibly dangerous. And frankly, parents, if you have not been paying attention, you need to realize your children are in extreme danger. Now's the time to protect them.
It's time now for some real education. We're wrapping it up with G.K. Chesterton Week here on Instant Classics. Gilbert Keith Chesterton. If you didn't know by now, he was an English philosopher, a theologian, an art critic, and a preeminent Christian apologist. He was born all the way back in 1874, and he described himself as an Orthodox Christian, and he eventually converted to Catholicism. Now, in many ways, Chesterton's way of thinking was an extension of such Victorian writers as Matthew Arnold, John Henry Newman, and John Ruskin. And his greatest works were Orthodoxy and The Eternal Man. Unfortunately, Chesterton died in 1936.
And yeah, it's a sad thing to bring to end Chesterton Week. So many great and pithy statements. He's somebody who thought well, write well, and carried his ideas well. And so he was as Katie pointed out, he was an extension of the late Victorian tradition, almost a Catholic revival, you could argue, in the culture and the arts of Victorian England. He wasn't born a Catholic, but he did become one. But Chesterton is best known for being what he would call what Lewis also said, a big C Christian, right? Not ultimately concerned with denominationalism. Take a look at our final quote about children from Chesterton today. Some time ago, I went with some children to see Maeterlinck's fine and delicate fairy play about the bluebird that brought everybody happiness. For some reason or other, it did not bring me happiness, and even the children were not quite happy. I will not go so far as to say that the bluebird was a blue devil, but it left us in something seriously like the blues. The children were partly dissatisfied with it because it did not end with a day of judgment, because it was never revealed that to the hero and heroine that the dog had been faithful and the cat faithless. For children are innocent and love justice, while most of us are wicked and naturally prefer mercy. And it's the end of the quote that I think matters. Obviously, they went to see a child's play, and the adult wasn't happy and the kids weren't happy. Why were the kids unhappy? Because justice wasn't done. Children have a profound sense of justice. Why? Because they're innocent. They are innocent in themselves. And as innocents, what they want is just treatment. But we, who are older and have drunk deep from the cup of sin and recognize our own sin and weakness, we don't want justice. Because we know if we were adults to get justice, that justice would be hell, probably. We want instead mercy. And so the bluebird of happiness didn't satisfy the kids and didn't make happy the adults, because we can't be made happy knowing who we are.
All right, just a quick reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. All you have to do is use your camera on your smart device to take a picture of one of the QR codes that is right for you. You're going to get access to 15 new shows a week, plus our library of content. It includes in-depth interviews, some lecture series, educational animations, and a whole ton of other stuff. All you have to do is download the Freedom Project app in your app store and make sure you allow for notifications. And of course, if you are a fan of this show, please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support the Patriot Club, and we're going to send you a signature tumbler as just a small token of our appreciation. Visit patriotclub.us to get signed up. That's patriotclub.us. Now we want to take just one little moment to show some love to our Patriot Club members, and today we're going to give a shout out to Sarah from Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin, just a little bit north of here. Thank you, Sarah, for supporting us.
In the words of Stephen Nick, Sarah, you're the poet in my heart. And that's going to do it for this show. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Katie, and envious of my singing. Until next time, stay educated, my friends.